All right. That seems like a good one to come in on. Even if I didn't really fully finish it. Hey guys, hey, it's me. It's hi. It's Tech. It's Tech. Blah, blah. Take two. Hey guys, how we doing? It's me. It's Tech. It's Tech. Turncoat. How you doing? Today's episode almost didn't happen because I've been having some trouble getting not exactly getting my medication. It's just the circumstances surrounding me getting that are changing, and it's a different situation than it used to be. And it's not like I need my medication to like function. Thankfully I'm not like in a situation where like if I don't have a medication I'm like crippled horribly throughout the day. Um, although from a certain point of view, a little bit. Um, I have terrible acid reflux. I think the worst I've ever heard of people having it, which is I don't know. It's treatable, but like it doesn't really seem serious enough to make like a whole thing of it. Um, but recently, my doctor changed the situation on me, I guess, and I can't really get meds right now without like paying, um, which is annoying. So I had to basically go a whole day without my medicine, and they wore off by the end of the day, and I was coughing and like gagging, and it was terrible. And I was like, I don't know that I can do a show like this. But I was able to. I just like, you know what, fuck it, whatever. And I shelled out the money to get it, and I have a medication and appointment with my doctor sometime soon, hopefully. You know how it goes. Insurance people always changing the fucking. Uh, but that's beside the point. Today we got more Witch of the Holy Night. It's good. Man, there's some serious times throughout last week where I was like, I kind of wish I could read Witch of the Holy Night right now. Actually, not during a stream, but like God. Sometimes it's good to like sit down and just read a visual novel for a while, or like a book. I used to read a lot of books. I used to read a lot of books a lot. One of them book reader kids. I'd always have one. Oh man, I'd always have a book with me in school, and I would read it like kids sneak their phones to nowadays. I assume, which is to say, a lot, very often, and usually while the teacher was talking. Um, and because it was a book, I never got in trouble for it, or at least I didn't get in as much trouble as I probably should have. Hmm, reading. Anyway, all that said, I think I'm just gonna start. There's no reason not for me not to. Night of the Witches. Next. Is that how you fucking spell his name? Sojuro. Returned to his apartment on foot as per routine, under a blanket of clouds in the night sky. The rusty stairs of his apartment building clanged with each step. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see the bicycles parked by the apartment building's outer wall. He debated the pros and cons of a bicycle, how much easier life would be versus the expense, the convenience versus the necessity. But in the end, he decided it was just not right for him just now. Clutching the bag of apples under his arm, he took out the key to his residence.
あれば便利だけど なくて。
A bike sure would be convenient. It's not like... He tilted his head in confusion. More and more he found himself preoccupied with such random thoughts. And the real issue at hand was deciding what to do with the apples he had received. He placed the paper bag in the sink and switched on the lights. It was just after 10 in the evening. With the end of term exams just around the corner, he had come home an hour earlier than usual. As he made back for the kitchen to pick one of the apples to snack on, he found an envelope stuffed in his mail slot. The envelope had no name, return address, or stamp. Inside was a single piece of paper that had only the sender's name and a short message. It read,
話があるので、今夜どこそこのここに来られたし、大事なようなので、来るまでずっと待っている。言うまでもなく、他言無用。
There's something we need to talk about tonight. It's important, so I'll be waiting. Needless to say, keep this a secret. A concise set of orders, neatly written. It was signed Aoko Aozaki. She had been considerate enough to enclose a detailed map of the meeting place. Puzzled, he cocked his head to the side and then headed out the door. Afterward, upon the room's sole tenant leaving the premises, the envelope burst into flames and evaporated without a trace, as though it had never existed in the first place. By the late 80s, Japan's post-war economic boom had somewhat stabilized, and the city experienced a period of steady growth. The city's modernization marched on, and the Japan Railway Station, a symbol of the new era, neared completion. In Misaki's neighboring town of Yashirogi, a new symbol of its own was about to be born. Skyscrapers? Yashirogi Bread and Kitsi Land. It was Misaki's worst investment. Years later, it would be dubbed the fool's gold of the economic bubble, a relic of a bygone age. The city lacks aspiration and sophistication. 10 years ago, Yashirogi's renowned Tokitsu Baking Company ran factories all across the nation. Its proprietor was a middle-aged gentleman, then age 56, by the name Yoshihiro Tokitsu, known affectionately by most as Topan. He took it upon himself to begin development of an estate on the outskirts of Yashirogi and broke ground on a recreational wonderland that he hoped to be the pride of Misaki City. The long-awaited opening came in 1981. After 3 years of investment, the local amusement park, full of all kinds of hopes and dreams, began its short-lived tenure. It covered more than 85 square acres. Jesus. Its magnificent merry-go-round dazzled all who passed through the park's gates. Its roller coaster twisted and turned about the edges of the park like a writhing Japanese dragon. Its Ferris wheel, packed beyond necessity with gimmicks, was said to have tested the limits of modern engineering. It's perfect, infused with everything an amusement park could ever need. Old Yurihiko looked upon his creation and smiled. Only boosting his confidence was the fact that his grand opening was staged during a period of prosperity, the springtime of the world. But, in spite of this, they splendidly miscalculated the balance between aspirations and sophistication. Its mascot, Kitsi, was poorly designed and appeared like a cheap knockoff. The park was stuffed to the brim with bread stands. Even its impossible to navigate mirror maze seemed out of date from the start. There are no dreams to be had at Kitsyland, only nightmarish satire. Numerous trade magazines lambasted Kitsyland's shortcomings, and customer attendance declined. There was even an incident where a 6-year-old strayed from his mother, had an accident, and nearly died. 1985, 5 years after the park had opened, the situation had grown from bad to worse, and the park was hemorrhaging money. On top of everything, Iudica, who had bet everything on the success of mascot Kitsy, retired, and Kitsyland's operations were officially in trouble. And thus, amidst the scorn of nearly all residents in the area, ended Misaki City's one and only amusement park. What's more, perhaps best described as a footnote to this debacle, the self-proclaimed region artist who designed the mascot, Toki Julich, was said to have snapped his brush in mourning over the closure of the park. Returning to the present, it was midnight, and the Kitsylander today was a shadow of its former glory. Like a doll abandoned in the corner of a toy box, the lonely park was illuminated only by the light of the town that continued to live around it.
なるほど。
I see. So that's what happened. Sojiro closed the Yashirogi guidebook that he had picked up on the way here. The story of its history was almost difficult to believe, but he supposed that that's what people referred to as entropy. Wow. Big concept for Sojiro, I think. Park's front gate was unlocked. When he worked here the previous time, the iron fence was locked shut with a rusty chain, but the chain was nowhere to be seen, and the gate left ajar. Following the map drawn in the letter, Sojiro quickly made his way inside.
急ぎのようなんだろうけど、こんな夜中に何なんだ一体。
It sounded urgent. To meet this late at night, what in the world could she want? Sojiro complained quite out of character for him. I guess the line would be, Sojiro complained quite out of character for him. It was probably because, in spite of his naivete, even he knew that something was amiss. The park was abandoned. This was still trespassing. Unlawful entry, larceny, burglary. These were certainly not things, or perhaps crimes, that Sojiro was proud to do, but...
すまない。お金は払えないんだ。
Sorry, can't pay you any money.
ただで入って申し訳ない。
I'm really sorry for coming in for free. Money, apparently, was why his conscience was gnawing at him. He clapped his hands in apology toward the statue of Kitsy, on whose eyes the paint had begun to aptly dissolve. Sojiro passed the mascot bleeding red paint from its eye sockets, and began to walk the night park. The building's colors had faded. The collection of machines was rusted. The man-made residents no longer felt the passage of time. Even the ghosts themselves could not endure the disparity between this forsaken place and its previous grand stature. It was like a fossilized dream. These were the ruins of a paradise, both created and abandoned by man and reality. The economy had stabilized, and the standard of living was on the rise. Nobody was overly concerned with the future. These were the remnants of a wild and exciting era. His breath turning to white wisps before him, Sojiro continued through the abandoned amusement park. The void of human presence, this was not nearly as frightening as the darkness deep in the mountains. City suburbs can take on many different forms. Kitsyland was unusual for an amusement park, insomuch as it had been built adjacent to a residential district. The park was surrounded by a forest, but even that, ultimately, was man-made. was no different from the curtains on a classroom window. If you were to scale the iron fence encircling Kitsyland and break through the 20 yards of forested trees, that's first, he could make it back to the familiar townscape. Though the amusement park tended to arouse dread in the city folk, to Sojiro, it was little different from the commotion and terror of downtown. I can understand that. A downtown is very intimidating if you're not used to one.
あれか
Guess that's it. The central plaza was as silent as a grave. According to the map, the meeting spot was west of here. Waiting for Sojiro at his destination was a rugged, imposing, magnificent castle, towering before the backdrop of a clouded night sky. Even for an abandoned park, it was a remarkable structure. If the roller coasters and the Ferris wheel were allowed, intense attractions, this was comparatively quiet and easygoing. It was one of Kitsuland's 3 iconic structures and, in a way, a wicked fortress that guided this paradise down the path of closure. Generally speaking, amusement park mazes generally fell into one of 2 categories. Labyrinths, which distort visitors with their sheer size, and mirror houses, which disorient visitors with optical illusions. Many of a labyrinth's guests enjoyed the brief sense of adventure that it afforded. Over the years, however, it would be usurped by the ever-increasing thrills of new attractions. Such was the way of all trends, the curse of fads. The new must give way to the newer. On the other hand, the House of Mirrors was a time-honored, beloved staple. Even within the confines of a classroom's dimensions, well-placed mirrors and well-directed light could both perplex and delight its visitors. And figuring in the cost of maintenance, a well-designed House of Mirrors could by far outlive its labyrinth brethren. Even if both types faded into obscurity, they would remain a staple of what constituted an amusement park. However, that didn't mean that combining them would produce double the fun. Together they transformed from entertainment into an uncanny realm from which those who dared to step within could never leave. In a similar sense, Kitsy's Mystery Tour Castle was the park's very own other world. Indeed, 5% of visitors ended up requesting staff assistance to get out. Modeled after European castles, it was far greater than a football field in length, and the interior was further split into 3 floors. Jesus. Sounds amazing, actually. 2 floors above the ground and 1 below, lined with mirrors from top to bottom, equal parts complex and vast. The maze demanded at least 30 minutes from even veterans. One visit was all it took to be struck by catastrophophobia for hours. Catastrophophobia. It was this labyrinth that now stood in Sojiro's way.
真っ暗ってわ
Catastrophophobia.
けじゃないな電気とかついてるんだろうか
Looks like it's not entirely pitch black. I guess somebody turned the lights on. It seemed that Sojiro, unaware of what a House of Mirrors even was, concerned himself only with its lighting. He checked the letter from Alko once more. The letter read, "I'll be waiting in the first floor lobby of the House of Mirrors." That meeting place was definitely in here. There was something to see by, at least, as he could just make out light faintly through the open doors. Put aside his suspicions, he headed towards the entrance. The sound of his steps against the brick-laid path echoed faintly. He was far from the hustle and bustle of the city. Park's clocks no longer made tick nor talk, and winter's bite no longer blew in the night. From within the silence, the stillness that would cause any onlooker to hold their breath. Hello? Sojiro stopped abruptly at the entrance to the House of Mirrors.
ところで青崎、そんなところで何してるんだ？
By the way, what are you doing over there, Ozaki? He called out, turning back towards the palazzo. A sound rang out as if someone had dove behind a garbage can, and it fell into the ground in their haste. A short silence ensued. For a moment, the abandoned park returned to its previous hush. Resigned to having been exposed, the girl appeared from her hiding place. Oh, is it a new outfit?
Oh.
Oh. His voice died in his throat as he took in the sight of the girl's familiar face in unfamiliar attire. This Aoko, with her long hair flowing in the breeze, was different from the Aoko that Sojiro knew. Nice. The resolute stance and posture she took exuded the strength of her will. She stared directly at him with a sharp-eyed, piercing gaze. Her eyes were glowing with a dim phosphoric light, enough to give Sojiro pause that he might be hallucinating. An icy coldness and a girl's strength. Sojiro lacked a sense of danger, but the sense of imbalance caused him to feel the malice in the air. It was as though the Yukiana spirit of folklore had climbed out from a ghost story and appeared here in reality.
Aozaki.
Aozaki? Instinctively, Sojiro took a step back. Surprised, he was starting to feel concerned. An unpleasant premonition rose on the surface, bringing with it a sense of anxiety. In spite of this, he felt obliged to honor urban etiquette by seeing if she was all right.
その顔を見るに何かあったのかと一応聞いておくんだけど。
Did something happen to you? From the looks of it, Without acknowledging him, Aoko took a step forward. Her figure, its atmosphere. Sojiro found himself recalling a recent memory. His twisted and knotted apprehension melted away and was replaced with a growing realization. The girl before him was very similar to someone he had seen before, that night in the park, though he'd only seen her from behind. With increasing certainty causing him to swallow nervously, he noted that they might as well have been identical.
何をしていたかって話なら見ての通りよ。
You asked me what I was doing? Well, it's exactly what it looks like.
ここで獲物が通り過ぎるのを待ってたの。あなたが入ってから私も入って逃げ道をなくすつもりだったから。
I was waiting for my prey to pass by. Once you went inside, I was going to follow you and cut off your only route of escape. Aoko said, perturbed by the swift change in plans.
そうか。待ち合わせ場所は合ってたんだな。
Good. Came to the right place. Sojiro was mightily relieved that he had not gone to the wrong place. It was unclear whether he felt confident about dealing with what was to come, or he had simply failed to grasp the hopelessness of the situation. Aoko ignored his obtuse response and continued.
私はね、しずきくん。
You know, Suzuki.
嫌いな人とか憎い人とかは人並みにいるんだ。
Just like anyone else, some people get on my nerves, and some people I just really hate.
ただ、ちょっと変なのが敵になるやつの条件でね。
But the funny thing is, my enemies are never people on my shit list. Cold emotion burned in her eyes. Her feet had already moved one step closer to Sojiro. Sojiro's sense of foreboding was growing stronger. Wondering if what he sensed was bloodlust, he retreated another step. Continuing as so, they maintained a distance of just 15 feet.
昔から私は嫌いな相手でも敵と思ったことはなかったの。
As far as I can recall, I've never thought of someone I didn't like as an enemy.
でも逆に好きな相手を敵だと思うこともあった。
As it happens, I've even had enemies that I liked.
理由は単純。
And the reason is simple. She held her right arm out. The light about her was no illusion.
当たり前のことだけど、
It's simple, really.
私は私の感情を乱すやつが敵なのよ。
Anyone who throws me out of whack is my enemy. Her arm moved again. It was instantaneous. Something shot past Sojiro in the blink of an eye, missing him by just a foot to his left. Before his eyes, a blue light, something akin to a fireball, had ignited from nothing. He finally understood what was happening.
ちょっと待った。今のは大変見覚えがある。
Wait a second. I've seen one of those before. She ignored his dim-witted reaction.
外したか。
Damn it. Missed. Naoko muttered to herself. The fist-sized hole the blue light had made in the House of Mirrors cracked and smoldered. A shot like that could easily cave in a human skull in addition to burning it to a crisp.
はあ、こんな射程で外すなんて、アリスに見られたら自殺者ね。
I'd just about kill myself if Alice saw me miss at this range.
でも、これで分かったでしょ。二度目だものね。あなたにとっては。
But you get it now, right? This is it for you. There won't be a second chance. Sojiro backed away swiftly. Things were beyond incomprehensible. He was close to losing the ability to think at all. All he could make out was the figure of the dependable student council president. Or at least, what he had thought was the president, and the memories of the park that was 2 nights ago. He'd never experienced anything like this, though most people living in a civilized country would never have seen anything like it either. A lethal weapon that could kill with nothing more than the pull of a finger had a way of suspending the ability of its target to determine between not just good and evil, but dreams and reality, past and future. And the more peaceful someone's life had been, the stronger that suspension was likely to be. All that one could think about was the fact that they were alive at the very moment. It was as if he was an unwritten character on a blank piece of white paper. There was no before, there was no after. There was only what came next. It was a very common thought process for anyone staring down the barrel of a gun.
命乞いはやめてね。意味ないから。
Oh, and don't bother begging. It's pointless.
でも、恨み事ならご自由に。殺す側の義務として一言一句聞いてあげる。
But feel free to air your grievances. It is a killer's duty to listen to her victim's last words. By saying it was pointless, she made it sound more like she would not listen to what he had to say. However, Sojiro was in such a state of shock that it did not even enter his mind to speak up. All he knew, for reasons unknown, was that the girl in front of them wanted him dead.
嘘つきにも程がある。
Only Tobimaru.
飛び丸のバカ。何がそんな生き物はいないだ。実際いるじゃないか、こんなお化けみたいなのが。
No such thing exists. How about now, you idiot? There's a monster right in front of me. Sojiro felt that he had said that aloud. If he had said that aloud, the second blast would come even quicker than the last, so he kept it to himself. His mental expletives stirred his mind from paralysis to mere panic. This response came not from confidence, however. Someday, out of the blue, someone is going to kill me. While it may have seemed like a baseless belief to hold,
でもそうだった。都会には殺人事件がある。
well, now that I think about it, murders do happen all the time in cities.
ルールを破れば殺されるのは当たり前だって。ちゃんと教えてもらってた。
Ah, shit, I remembered. You break the rules, you get killed. I knew that already. To To Sojiro, the situation seemed to perfectly align with his inexperienced understanding that the city was a coldly pragmatic place. As far as he was concerned at the moment, being killed by a classmate was not something to be so surprised by. In a society where murder was possible, he was able to accept this sort of situation as natural. Of virtually no concern was the series of events that led to Aoko's aggression towards him. The only thing that truly confused him was Aoko's blue fireball. Sojiro swallowed with an audible gulp. To anyone who may have been watching, it was the response of a victim paralyzed by fear.
そういうことよ。ようやく理解してくれたわね。
That's right. You finally get it.
多くは語らないけど、あなたにはここで死んでもらう。
I'm out of words now, so I think it's time you died.
魔術は隠匿するもの。なんて言っても、そっちには関係のないことだし。単に運がなかったって思えばいいわ。大事なのは、私があなたを殺したってことだけだから。
I could go on and on about how magecraft has to stay hidden, but that doesn't really have anything to do with you. All you need to know is that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that it was me who killed you. Done talking, Aoko once again lifted her right arm. There was a hum like a machine. Blue light began to revolve around her arm beneath her sleeve. This was taking longer than last time, leading Sojiro to believe that if it was going to be much stronger than the attack, he was still scorching the wall behind him. This realization caused his panic to heighten.
いや、なんだ、つまり始末するとかしないとか、あの夜のお化けは青崎だったとか、都会は本当に込み入ってるとか、そういうことじゃなくて。
Interesting. No, but it's not about me having to die, or the fact that the monster of the night was actually Azaki, or even whether she's part of the church. I don't need that. How do you already know about the church, man? His thoughts became jumbled. His heart pounded like a hammer. This is no time to be standing still. He was not sure if the girl in front of him was really human. And more importantly, even if he could accept the events unfolding before him. When all was said and done. Wait. It's wrong to kill people. Even if it was a fact of the life in the city, Sojiro was not about to lie down and die. Don't you think I know that? Hey, hold on. Sojiro's scream, still entirely oblivious, was just the thing to invoke Aoko's full wrath. Cool. Like a revolver. Oh, fuck. Aoko fired a barrage of magical blue bullets. In an instant, Sojiro dashed into the shadows behind him, into the entrance of the House of Mirrors. What the hell was that? He darted feverishly down the hall. After a mere few feet, he was left completely out of breath. This was due to his shock at seeing yet another attack, fiercer than the first, that he'd never seen in his life, and because he couldn't shake the thought that if he had moved even a second later, he would be dead. He could not afford to stop, because you could hear her shooting him right now. The sound of merciless footsteps closed in behind him. I bought myself some time. Maybe here I'll be able to figure out something. He threw everything into his legs as he sprinted. A straight, narrow passage about 60 feet long connected the entrance to the main lobby. At this rate, if he could just make it to the lobby, he was sure he would be able to find as many hiding spots as he needed. Thank God! He arrived in a large open space. This was the first floor lobby. There were 3 passageways. One led to the basement floor, one connected to the first floor maze, another was a set of stairs leading to the second floor. Sojiro did not particularly care which one he chose, so trusting his intuition, he made a run for the first floor maze when... He smacked his head into a transparent wall. Surprised he didn't run into one earlier. A mirror.
ええ、面倒だけど、それならフェアでしょ。
That's right. It's annoying, but I guess this makes things fair.
追いかける方にも逃げる方にも有利不利がある。
The chaser and chased are on equal ground. A somehow cheerful voice echoed in his direction. There was no need for Sojiro to even turn around. Oh shit, yeah, you can see her. In the very same mirror he had crashed into, he could see Aoko Aozaki's figure slowly approaching.
それと1階の奥にある出口は封鎖しといたから。結界じゃなくて物理的に。
You should know, I sealed off the first floor exit deeper inside. Physically, not with a bounded field.
やりすぎて封鎖っていうより瓦礫？土砂崩れ？どっちでもいっか。とにかく下手に出口に近づくと崩落に巻き込まれるから。生き埋めが嫌なら近寄らないことね。
Is calling it a seal going too far? Maybe plugged or buried works. Either way, if you get too close, you'll be swallowed by a cave-in. I recommend keeping your distance if you don't want to be buried alive. Panicked by the impending footsteps, Sojiro groped for the wall. He could see the stairs to the second floor. He didn't understand what Aoko had meant earlier, but at least he knew the first floor was not going to save him.
ま、私としてはそっちのが助かるけど。
It would save me a lot of trouble if you just died that way, though.
形式上、事故死の方が後始末とか楽だから。
Cleanup is so much easier for accidental deaths. Behind him was a creature beyond words. As she continued her idle taunting, she lifted her right arm ostentatiously. Even from above her clothes, one could see some kind of strange, incongruous pattern on her body. Veins beneath her skin. They made it seem as though something inhuman was circulating her body. Her circuits. Whether out of pity or repulsion, Sojiro stopped for just a moment. His pursuer evaded his gaze.
ああ、これ？普段は塗り薬で隠しているんだけど、今日は特別。
You noticed then? Normally I had it with an ointment, but today is special.
魔術刻印って言ってね、
Yeah,
魔術師の証みたいなものよ。
our crest and our circuits. It's called a magical crest. It's proof that I'm a mage.
ほら、光が回ってるでしょ。これがさっきのスナップ。わかりやすく言うと弾丸の元。
You see this light revolving around me? It's the beginning of what formed that snap. Those bullets.
今日は調子いいし、私、魔力を効率よく使うのだけは自信あるし。
Oh no.
あと30回ぐらいかな。さっきみたいな装着ができるのは。
I'm feeling yeah, I'm feeling pretty good today, and I've never felt more confident in how to use my magical energy efficiently. I think I'm good for another 30 bullets or so. Perhaps she was on an emotional high, for her voice had become frightfully friendly. The substance of the conversation could not have been any more unsettling, however.
そもそも何を言っているかよくわからないんだけど、青崎。
Azaki, I don't understand anything you're saying.
わからない？弾数はあと30発ってこと。
You don't? I'm telling you, I have 30 more shots in the tank.
そこまで逃げ切ればあなたの勝ちよ。とりあえず、今日のところはね。
If you can escape before I use them up, it's your win. For today, that is.
今日はって明日もあるのかな。
Today? I mean, I gotta do this tomorrow, too? Sojiro knit his brows. Aoko's expression creased into a scowl at his behavior. Although he was panicking, it seemed that deep down he still did not feel the full weight of the crisis. She knew he didn't get it.
宣言はしたわ。自由時間はこれでおしまい。
I've said my piece. Free time's over.
まだ罵り足りないだろうけど、ま、その手の時間はキリがないしね。この辺りで諦めて。
I may still have some trash talk left in me, but there's never enough time to get it all off my chest anyway. Just give up already. It appeared Aoka had prepared this theatrical dialogue ahead of time. Not to allow her opponent time for futile pleading, but to give him the time to curse her, his killer. Such forthrightness was her modus operandi. With this victim, however, it was not going as she had hoped.
とにかくそういうことだから。
Anyway, that's all I have to say.
じゃ、狩りの時間と行きましょうか。
Shall we begin the hunt in earnest? Her voice was void of emotion, and her eyes ruthless as they bored into her prey. This time, Sojiro finally accepted that he was probably going to die. Silent as the dead, it stepped into the remnants of a dream that had long since seen no visitors. There was no wind this night, nor a soul to be seen. Still, it heard the echoes from within, clasped its hands together, and grinned. Its form, with hands clasped, resembled that of a budding tulip. The bearing of this artificial flower reflected in the cloudy mirror of the ticket attendant's office next to the gate. Next to it stood a display board, corroded by years upon years of rust. Number of visitors today? 2. Number of today. The board had graffiti crudely scrawled atop one of the words. It was replaced with deaths. The records board had long ago fallen into disrepair. After taking a full 10 seconds to digest what it was looking at, it made its own revision. Number of visitors today, 3. Number of deaths today, 1. After ending this number with an index finger, she smiled like a flower. Then she began to walk towards the source of the sound. It had been 10 minutes since this rhapsody had begun to echo from the House of Mirrors. The amusement park's entrance returned to as it was before, soulless. In the end, even if Sojiro had been the luckiest man alive, there was no way he should have been able to escape. The question, however, was how much of this was by design, and how much of this was sheer coincidence. Even Alko, who had made all the arrangements, had no answer. Indeed, there was only 3 things she could say. It was taking longer than expected, he was putting up more resistance than she had anticipated, and that choosing the House of Mirrors had been a mistake. She'd really screwed the pooch on this one. The location itself was an excellent choice, as the House of Mirrors was perfect as a hunting ground. But seeing her own incompetence reflected in the mirrors was beginning to grate on her. The moment Alko's right arm began to glow, Sojiro made a beeline for the staircase in front of him. A strobing series of blue flashes lit the room behind him. The hunter calmly followed her prey, and the prey desperately ran for his life up the stairs. Like she's loading the gun. Just what the doctor ordered. We can't very well let the best laid plans go to waste now, can we? In stark contrast to Sojiro's frenzied escape, Alko walked briskly up the stairs. She elected not to run after her prey in order to maintain a set distance. As she lacked confidence in her accuracy, she would be the most challenged if Sojiro bull rushed her and went down fighting. But at a distance of 30 or so feet, he posed no threat. By the time her prey drew near, she could fire 10 shots, and hit with at least 4 of them. Their positioning just a moment ago hadn't been ideal. At this distance, in a space this open, there was a chance, however, small, that it could turn into a fistfight if he flanked and charged her. Currently, Falco's best weapon was the bullets from her right arm. If she was going to capitalize on that advantage, it was in her best interest not to close the gap between them. If there was a good time to approach, it was only after her prey had become exhausted and had lost the will to continue. Would she pierce his leg, shoot him in the back? Or perhaps, would she give up after losing himself in the labyrinth? Would he just give up after losing himself in the labyrinth? The hunt would end when her target sustained some sort of injury and became unable to run. On Sojiro's end, he could barely fight back on screaming as he bolted through the maze. Even running in a straight line had become difficult, much less searching for an exit. Ow! Corridor stretched out far before him, or so the mirrors blocking the path made it seem. Panicked, he made a turn to the right. Clutching his head in his right arm, Sojiro led with his left, groping through the air to see whether a wall was there or not. He dove down the hall to the left, narrowly dodging the bullets targeting his leg. Urged on by the sound of approaching footsteps, oops, shit. He ran without thinking. The last one was close. A hair closer would have meant his life. He caught the odor of burnt hair from the back of his neck. He was very lucky. Or perhaps very unlucky. If he were actually lucky, he would not be in the situation in the first place. The second floor of the House of Mirrors was structured like a giant spiral. It wound left, starting from the outside wall. Eventually, it would lead to a dead end. The more he tried to escape, the more cornered he would become, as though he were trapped in a twisted guillotine. His stifled screams threatened to leak out his complaints. That's fair. No matter what he did, he was going to be killed. All of his struggling merely served to prolong the inevitable. Yet he ran. No matter how many mirrored walls he rammed himself into, he ran. Even after crashing so hard his forehead bled and he saw stars, he ran. Pain shot through him at every turn. The more frantically he ran, the more intensely he smashed into the invisible walls. His body began to understand this rule and begged him not to run anymore. His breath was already ragged after sprinting a couple 100 feet. No matter how he thought about it, this was not normal. This was way too crazy. It was just a bad joke. If he turned around now, she would apologize to him for taking it too far. His mind had gone blank as his body continued to slam into the mirrors again and again. His feet slowed as they began to believe that perhaps it really was all a joke. But then he felt the chill, a touch of death upon his neck. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Sojiro knew this kind of terrible chill far too well. Ever since he had arrived in the city, he had become face to face with more than one or two near-death experiences. For someone who did not understand city life, his present predicament was not unlike when he had experienced the traffic in the streets, or the commuter rush to the station platform. He was far from an innocent babe, unable to comprehend life or fear. Rather, everything he had ever known became irrelevant when he was flung into a completely different cultural sphere. Even society's promise of safety, something urbanites took for granted, were threats unknown. So, he was used to this already. Though, if he were to be honest, he was dissatisfied with some things. Things superfluous to necessity. This world was overflowing with valueless things, and they were all dangerous in some way. Even the everyday necessities sold at the convenience store were, as far as he was concerned, amazing tools. Civilization had raised the standard of living so high that it numbed humanity's sense of danger. The city's constant pursuit of wealth and convenience was a poison to a country boy like Sojiro. And he did not have the capacity to accept these conveniences. It was possible for such conveniences to easily and suddenly be misused and cause unintended accidents. That always made him anxious. That it was possible. Okay, I see. Why? He had to wonder why he was even here. It's not the time to get philosophical, brother. Ah, how ironic. It took the real threat of death to finally make him realize, like a divine revelation, what he'd failed to understand until now. He'd always had to expect the unexpected. Near-death experiences were more common than one might think. To begin with, safety was something that came at a price. Being alive meant that the opposite was lurking around the corner at all times. It was just like a streetlight at night. When the sun rose, its illumination would naturally disappear. Another barrage of strange projectiles whizzed mercilessly by him. He recalled in the back of his mind the charred remains of someone at the hands of that blue flame 2 nights prior. Somehow the situation reminded him of a horse being led by a dangling carrot. For now he lifted his head and continued to run through the labyrinth. But for what purpose? Though he knew the pain in his chest was very real, he felt disconnected from it. The night sky visible through the skylight was a muddy ultramarine, no longer resembling the one he knew. And managed to calm himself. Sojiro began to laugh in despair, as though something rather precious had been broken. Everything had become meaningless anyway. Even so, his legs somehow made their way forward at the sight of her reflection in the mirror. Like a game of cat and mouse, Sojiro fled through the labyrinth of mirrors. Then, after 4 minutes, that strangely unreal tension ended. The 9th shot of blue light hit inches away from him. It exploded the moment it made impact, launching Sojiro into the opposite wall. Of all the fire he had taken thus far, this shot indisputably brought him the closest to death. Groaning, he collapsed to the floor. His back was on fire with pain. He wasn't bleeding, and was lucky he could even still scream. Yet his body refused to move. Physically and mentally, he still had something to spare. Pain wasn't so bad that he couldn't get back up. It was just that there was the skylight above him, and he can glimpse the dark of the night sky beyond. The feeling that overcame him was a raw, selfish bout of grief. Oh, it was just so cruel to have to stare at that for the remainder of whatever short life he had left. Sojiro's ragged breath slowed. For all intents and purposes, he had given up. He had given up fleeing from his pursuing footsteps, and perhaps even the root of all his problems.
まあ、青崎に殺されるならいいかな。
Well, if it was anybody, at least it was Ozaki. Sojiro Suzuki felt things that, in any other circumstance, he would never feel. Incidentally, with that exaggeration or embellishment, this was the only mistake he had ever made in his entire life. Staring vacantly into the night sky above, Sojiro listened as the footsteps drew near.
ギブアップ
she said in English. It was the closest her voice had ever been to him. Perhaps feeling that he had really given up, she approached his collapsed form. In the dark, mirror-lined corridor, he could not make out her expression. Without a word, Sojiro raised his eyes to meet his murderer.
返事がないならそれでいいけど。
I suppose if you don't care, you don't have to ask.
調子狂うわ。普通どうして殺そうとするのかぐらい聞くものじゃない？
You really do throw me off. Most people would ask me why I'm going to kill them right about now. Alko spoke from within the shadows. His eyes widened in bewilderment. Now that she had mentioned it, he realized that it would have been the obvious question to ask. He had more or less picked up on the fact that he was being killed for learning some secret, but it was human nature to kind of want to know more.
そっか。それはそうなるな。
Yeah, I guess that makes sense now that you mention it. Simple affirmation. His face was a mixture of resignation and forlorn longing. He thought for a moment before,
でも言う必要はない。
but you don't have to say anything.
聞きたくないんだ。そういうのは。
I don't want to hear it. He responded in a mature, subdued voice. His response was clear, rather gallantly so.
そう。
I see.
じゃ、殺すけど。死ぬの怖くないの？
Still gonna kill you. Aren't you scared of dying?
怖いに決まってる。何より痛そうだ。
Yeah, I'm scared. That'll probably hurt. His face turned awry as he objected, to which Alco frowned. As nonchalant as he could be, he was honest about his feelings.
そりゃ怖いでしょ。私だって怖いと思うし。
Of course it'd be scary. I'd be scared too, you know.
でも悪いわね。我慢して。
Sorry, though. You just need to be dealt with.
人でなしと罵ってくれて結構よ。今の私は本当にその通りだから。
It's fine if you want to call me a monster. It's exactly what I am right now.
そういった意味じゃあんたと同じ。普通の道徳がないのよ。だから必要なら人も殺せる。
I guess in that way I'm just like you. I don't have what you would call normal morals. Helps when you need to murder someone. Sojiro's finger twitched in response to her indifferent tone. By the way, I should say, she's definitely putting up a front. When she thought she killed that guy, like 2 nights ago, she definitely was like, oh god, my first murder. That felt weird. As if to say that, despite having given up on just about everything, his body could not let those words slide.
人殺しなんて良くないぞ。
Murder's wrong, you know.
分かってるって言ってるでしょ。
We went through this already. I know that. Oko raised her right hand. The light from her crest illuminated her face. It goes without saying that her expression was unchanged. She wasn't crying, nor was she smiling. She was a young woman who had excised her feelings. Deal with it was another thing Sojiro could not let slide. Sojiro could read out on Alko's face that she was not herself. She was in pain, and to a degree that he had never seen in her.
すまない。ちょっといいかな。
Hey, I'm sorry, but I do have something to say.
何？ここまで悲壮感を盛り上げておいて、やっぱり逃げるなんてのは却下よ。
What is it? But don't think you could trick me into letting you go by making me feel bad. unconsciously smiled at Aoko's ruthless counter and breathed a sigh of relief. He'd misread the pain he saw in her. This really was the same Aoko. Sojiro laughed out loud in genuine joy, a laugh that most other people would have taken as an insult.
遺言でも聞いてあげようと思った私が甘かった。
I'm starting to regret letting you say your
って
piece.
いうか、今の小バカにした笑いがあんたの遺言ってことで OK？
Or should I take that attempt to make fun of me as just that?
いや、そうじゃなくて、あそこにいる人は青崎の友人なのか？
No, I'm not laughing at you. I was just wondering if that person over there was a friend of yours, Aozaki. Out of nowhere, Sojiro pointed behind Aoko.
はあ？
What? Aoko thought that it must have been the old, overused distraction technique. If this had been a Japanese comedy act, this would be the part where she gave him a whack with a paper fan. But after giving it... Manzai? But after giving it a second thought, she realized Sojiro didn't have the capacity to understand old or even new tricks.
あんた何言って？
What are you... Perhaps his honest disposition had been his benefit. Oh, you can see them. Right there. This is just where my mind is at, but it does look a little bit like Enkidu. Without thinking, Aoko gave in to her curiosity and turned her gaze towards the direction in which his finger was pointed. And there... No shit. Something that should not have been there in the maze. Something with a creaking wooden smile. It was the ominous, creepy, uncanny figure of a girl. What? An unusual figure with 2 arms and 2 legs stood silently in the darkness. If only for a moment its beauty, which was even apparent from afar, dulled the insanity of the current situation. Awful. Terrible. Extend, extend, extend. The utterly unknown threat made Aoko freeze on the spot. Avoiding it didn't even occur to her. Humans possess intelligence and knowledge, but when confronted with the unknown, they fail to process what to do, and... Zabanya! Hey, it's the stun picture. A shriek escaped from Aoko's mouth. The magical attack crossed the 30-foot gap in an instant. The arm of the quote-unquote girl who had appeared from the rear of the corridor was slender and quick. It extended to a near impossible length, striking Aoko from behind. Aoko crashed into the wall as she fought back an anguished whimper. The attacker retracted her arm. Ozaki! Sojiro sprang to his feet. He darted to her side and used all the strength he could muster to get her to her feet. He couldn't believe how light she was. In Sojiro's mind, Aoko was an extraordinary individual. He'd expect that if he were to ever touch her, it would be apparent that she was far stronger than he. But in reality, she felt about as heavy as you would expect a 100-pound girl to feel. You know, about 100 pounds. Meanwhile, that thing continued to reel in its arm as if it were some sort of mechanism. Having extended more than 30 feet from the elbow joint, it clanked as it returned to its previous shape and size. Yo, are you okay? He wouldn't say yo. You for real? Why can't you even look at me right now? Like that, right? How can you even look at me like that right now? Okay. Aoko tore her hand away from Sojiro's. Suddenly, she felt her knees buckle from under her, but Sojiro caught her before she could hit the ground and helped her to her feet.
で、あいつは知り合いか?
Don't push yourself so hard. So, like, do you know this thing? He looked back at the eerie shadow 30 feet away as it finished retracting its arm.
そうね。似たようなやつとは命をせめぎ合ったのかよ。
Yeah. I fought one of its friends a while back. Alko grabbed her lower back as she answered. A searing pain shot through her.
でも、痛いっちゃ痛いけど、打撲だけ。
It's just a bruise. How can it hurt this much?
あれだけ絶好の奇襲をしておいて。それとも、この距離じゃ当たっても致命傷にならない。
It killed me catching me off guard like that. Or maybe it can't kill from that distance?
あるわけないか。何か別の意味があると見るべきね。
No, that can't be it. I must be missing something. Alko tried to steady her breathing as she assessed the damage done to her back. The pain was quick to fade and her breathing returned to normal. For the time being, her motor functions were no longer hindered, which meant the real damage was elsewhere. Cool.
Aozaki, あれ.
Oh, Aozaki, you're...
分かってるわ。黙ってて。
Ugh, I know. Just shut up already. Blue light glowed across the gloom. The magical energy generated by her breathing was accumulating in her right arm. If magical energy was the fuel, the formula was the igniter. For Alko, this was little more than a reenactment of 2 evenings ago. Next time the puppet extended its arm, Alko would fire a magical bullet as fast as she could. A battle at approximately 30 feet. As long as Alko could secure a 2-second window, she could create a counterattack to end their duel. It made its move. With its head tilted down, there was no expression to be seen, but in the darkness, its apparent age was impossible to make out. The 2 humans, the puppet was not too dissimilar to a faceless ghost. With hair kinda like hers, actually. Well, maybe that's just me. Its left arm slowly came up with a grinding sound. Its movements were dull, as if the joints were rusty. The right arm, which had been extended earlier, hung at its side. All joints. Though the puppet's mouth was hidden by its long locks, the sense was that it was smiling.
さっきと用途が違う。あれが本命。
It's changing it up. It's attacking from the left.
しずきくん、どいて。
Move it, Suzuki. She threw herself into Sojiro and extended her hand, its arm extended at the very moment. The timing was impeccable. In a single second, Alko's snap bullet scored a direct hit on the puppet's arm, throwing it off its trajectory and sending it crashing into the puppet's body with a violent explosion. Or at least, that's what would have happened had the magic formula been invoked. She barely avoided being struck once again. When her magecraft failed her, intuition took over, and she managed to get away.
やられた。最初のはそういうことか。
She got me! She knew what I was gonna do! She clenched her teeth in frustration, her thoughts racing a mile a minute. Fight? Flight. It only had one arm left, which would take time to retract. This was the best shot Alko had at defeating it. If she could obey the right arm just a fraction, she could get close enough to...
Vivo insum solitae reputres inferis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies, te obeam.
Vivo in somno solitaire fresco in infirmis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies, te obeam. In slumber I live, in dirt I rot alone. Today is the day I died and was born. I come to you. A crackle echoed through the corridor. Poetic murmurs contained enough magical energy for a mage to perceive. The verse itself was Latin, but contained hints of the language that curses. Gonder. Originally, there were words meant to curse a hated adversary. However,
Mer animae mortalis, otem eftura negata sunt. Manes sum, animam definire ambiguum est. Teode et te am, conveniamus insomnio ipso.
I'm just going to read the English one. Oh no! My life is immortal, and my future was destroyed. I am a ghost. The definition of life is ethereal. I hate you. I love you. Let us meet in a dream. The puppet was directing the words at itself. Curses beget curses. The victim calls down a curse on the assailant, creating a vicious cycle of negativity. The incantation was meant to do just that. However, it was ultimately a one-puppet show. An unprecedented source of power akin to auto-intoxication. As unbelievable as it seemed, the cycle of curses had been turned into a perpetual motion device. Gotta be kidding me, isn't this overkill? Aoko abandoned the idea of digging her heels in. It was time to flee with all due haste. What do you think you're doing? Come on! She grabbed Sojiro's hand and ran as fast as she could, deeper into the realm of mirrors. The crackling voice continued its murmuring behind them.
Proximi mich negligentes ferunt, omnes nos peccantes fims, et omnes nos edem fims, omnes nos peccatoris sums. Venit domum meum, lut simile somnium, et pulvere simile quotidianum, corporebo.
Whoever's doing this is really good pronunciation. My neighbors neglected me. Not an innocent among us. We are all sinners. We are all sinners. Welcome to my house. May we die a muddy death, from dust to dust. Gouge out my heart.
Iudica.
Death be upon you. Aoko fought against the pain in her back as she ran through the mirrored corridor. She dragged Sojiro by the hand.
Aozaki, 傷は?
Hey, Azaki, are you okay?
別に背骨が痺れてる程度よ。内臓は平気だし、出血もないみたい。
My spine is numb, but it could be worse. My internal organs seem fine, and I don't think I'm bleeding internally. She cursed inwardly at how much of a mess she felt, though. Unlike Sojiro, Aoko did not run away into any transparent walls. Thanks not to her superior sight, but rather preparation. She'd hammered the layout of the building in her memory. Hold on for a second. Do-do-do-do-do. Come on. Right, there it is. Oh. Making a little note for myself.
平気ってわかるのか?
You're really okay? How can you tell?
そりゃ自分の体だもの。身体管理は基礎中の基礎よ。
Because it's my body. One of the first things a mage learns is how to keep track of your body. Aoko's matter-of-fact answer contrasted with Sojiro's nervous questioning. The corridor grew shorter with each and every left turn. At first, they were able to advance in a straight line for about 100 feet at a time. By now, they were forced to turn a corner every 50 feet or so. Jesus, this place is huge.
あの夜の?
Is that the one from the other night?
多分ね。同じタイプだと思う。貴重なオートマタを惜しげもなく使い捨てるなんて、よっぽどお金持ちなんだろうけど。
Probably the same type at least. Whoever's behind it must be pretty wealthy to be throwing valuable automaton around like it's a toy. Sojiro furrowed his brows. He was grateful that she was answering his questions, but baffled by the strange words she was using.
青崎ストップ。もう随分走ったぞ。
Stop in English. Hold on, Aozaki. We've been running for a long time.
あいつは曲がり角一つ分向こうだ。少し休もう。
We're a good corner ahead of it. We can at least afford to rest a moment. His words suggested that he was still concerned about her injuries. Aoko shook her head in irritation.
あの距離を狙ってくる相手に通路一つ分のリードは無意味よ。せめて二つ分に行くまで走るの。
Not enough against something with that kind of range. We need to keep running until we're at least 2 or 3 turns clear. At least. Sojiro nodded. With that matter settled, he asked,
なんで俺を連れて行ってるんだ？
Why didn't you leave me behind?
逃げられたくないからじゃない、バカ。
What do you think? So you couldn't get away, idiot. Answering curtly, Algo glared at her naive prey. The two of them headed for this next corner. Their legs began to slow as they rounded one more. Alko rubbed her back as she tried to catch her breath. Though Alko had insisted that she was fine, it appeared to have been bravado. Even the usually clueless Sojiro felt the desperation they were in. He stood behind Aoko with his arms folded. While they had a moment, he tried to make sense of everything. First, Aoko had nearly killed him. Though he was saved at the last possible second, it was by the strange, stretchy woman Aoko had burned to ashes 2 nights prior. He could barely make it out that night, but he considered it a her because, well, it looked female enough. The woman's attack wounded Aoko's back and forced her to flee. Aoko had taken Sojiro with her, claiming that the reason she did so was to prevent her prey from escaping. In other words...
青崎はまだ諦めてないんだな。
Oh, you didn't give up, did you, Aozaki?
当たり前よ。あんなやつ、仮に2体と半分始末しても、あんた用の余力は残せるわ。
Of course not. Even if I had to face 2 of those things, I'd still have plenty to take care of the likes of you. Her tone was sharp, but even Sojiro could see that she was struggling to stay confident. The damage to her body was too much to afford her any optimism. Still, the fury in her eyes refused to accept her circumstances.
中がところどころショートしてる。あの右腕は回路を混戦させるジャミングってわけね。
My magic circuits are shortening like crazy, which means that right arm of hers must be jamming my spells. Although the proper response would have been for her to tremble in fear, it did nothing but shake her fists or anger. The disruption of formula was only supposed to work on absolute beginners. If it had been her roommate, this arm would have been repelled the instant it hit her, and the attacker's circuits burned out rather than her own. Attempting to re-establish a link to the magic circuits of another mage was like presenting your heart on a silver platter, if you have no use in battle against a superior mage. And yet her adversary had been designed to do just that. Coupled with the attacks on areas of Misaki under Aoko's jurisdiction these last few weeks, it was a clear statement from the enemy who had revealed itself as a fellow mage 2 days ago. In other words, the puppet saw Aoko as no threat at all.
敵ながら正確な判断だこと。
Played right into their hands, huh? Though she was still angry, the whirlwind of emotions within her started to fade. Her face was that of a hunter, far beyond her years.
なんか俺の時より真剣だな。
Seemed to be more concerned about this thing than you were about hurting me.
まあね、あんたの時は遊びが入ってたし。
Well, obviously, I was only playing with you. Sojiro wasn't sure whether to be happy or sad at that.
わからないことだらけで何を聞いていいかわからないんだけど、一つだけいいか。
This is all so confusing, I don't even know where to start, but can I ask one question? Aoko didn't respond. Her eyes were focused on the darkness before them. The silence was heavy, and the darkness was like a noose closing in on them. Sojiro continued in spite of her indifference.
青崎はあいつも殺すのか
Are you gonna kill her too, Ozaki? The stillness fell over them. It was as if the gloom was pulling them in. No response. Their breathing was the only sound echoing in the dim corridor. There stood Sojiro, forcing her to confront her sins, and the magician girl who continued to ignore him. They spent a few seconds seemingly frozen in time.
そう
Yeah,
それがあなたのキーワードみたいね
that's some sticking point for you, isn't it? Alko whispered in a lifeless tone. Her sigh was tinged with both resignation and contempt.
キー何
Sticky what?
独り言よ忘れて
Nothing, forget it.
それと言っとくけどあいつは人間じゃないわ
But just so you know, the thing that's following us isn't human.
信じられないだろうけど自分の意志で動く人形なのこの前のも今のやつもね
You might not believe this, but it's a puppet that can move on its own will, just like the one from the other night. Sojiro nodded as he processed that information. Not only did he now doubt her story, but it seemed to have accepted it at face value.
なんか落ち着いてるわねあなた
You're pretty calm.
まさかもう何が何だかわからないからあまり考えないことにしてるだけだ
Big same, brother. Nah, I just have no idea what's going on. I'm just trying not to think too hard about it.
ただ人形に関しては別にどうということはない
The part about it being a puppet isn't too surprising to me, though.
もしかして他でも自動人形を見たことあるとか
What? Are you saying you've seen one before?
都会の人形ってああいうものじゃないのか
What do you mean? Aren't all puppets in the city like that? She barely stopped herself from falling to her knees. Of course. How could she have forgotten? She was dealing with a bona fide natural-born moron. As a student who transferred from the isolation of the mountains like an endangered species, his utter lack of common sense rendered anything miraculous as mundane. If automobiles were moving husks of metal, then puppets were nothing to write home. Moving puppets were nothing to write home about. Wait, that meant to him the incident from the other night hadn't been extraordinary at all. He might have even assumed that it was an everyday occurrence in the city, which he did.
参ったいっぺん頭の中覗いてみたいっていうかほんとここまで来ると感心するわ
Oh my god, I give up. You know, I'd really like to get a look inside your head one day. I have no idea how you made it this far in life.
調子が狂うのも当然だった普通は私に襲われた時点でもっと違う反応をするはずなのに
No wonder you're such a weirdo. Normally, people wouldn't react the way you did when I
化
attacked
け
you.
物とかお化けとかさでもあなたにとってはそういうこともあるで済まされてたわけなんだ
I could have been a monster or a ghost, but for you, it was just another new fact of life.
なんかバカみたいね私
I'm starting to feel like the real moron around here. Her strained face returned to normal for a moment. It hit her. There had been another way to handle this without anyone getting hurt. But the damage had already been done. There were no do-overs in life, nor should there be. Her own mistaken assumptions had sent that situation spiraling out of control. But now that Sidro hadn't been involved, she had to make sure that her secret was safe with him. Even if there had been another, better option, that ship had sailed. Human relationships were ultimately driven by mutual misunderstandings. They were like tapestries, woven from mismatched intentions. Break time was over. There stood Aoko Ozaki and Sojiro Suzuki. Their first ever idle conversation had come to an end. Not that they had a choice in the matter. It was the jarring murmuring from around the corner that cut it short.
Nemo mef nus memnit, vedret extinct sest. Initio eraberamos dom revimus dolores sunt. Nemo adiuvat.
Nobody remembers my funeral. My mourners have long since perished. We were born wrong. Life is suffering. Somebody save me. The enemy was just around the corner, visible in the mirrors parallel to it.
悠長に話してる場合じゃないわね。とにかく今は距離を。
We don't have time for this. We need to keep our Huh? Oh shit. In contrast to Aoko's elegant blues, its lace were a malicious red.
ガンダ打ち。
Gonder shots. There was a momentary flash of light before she even extended her arm. But the instant she saw the enemy, her dormant feelings erupted once more.
さっきから邪魔なのよ。
You reveal pain in the ass. Ooh. She channeled all of her pent-up anger and shunted it into her right arm. The fog that filled the corridor was no magical weaving, but rather a barrier of raw energy. It was equivalent to setting ablaze 3 buckets of gasoline to create a wall of fire in the hope that it would stop an arrow in flight. If the puppet had attacked with its arm, it could pierce such a wall easily, but because it had loosed curses with no definite form, the wall of energy repelled the attack. While it was a huge waste of magical energy, it was the only means Aoko had to protect herself at that very moment. Unfortunately, its protection was reserved for Aoko alone. Sojiro held his hand to his mouth? While the curse had been weakened to the point where Aoko could no longer feel it, it had plenty of effect on Sojiro, who was not a mage. As if it understood this fact, the puppet turned its gaze from Aoko to the unanticipated human behind her. This has nothing to do with him. Enraged, she swung her arm forward once again. The blue light formed a wall to block the Gonder shot for a scant few seconds. It was enough of an opening to exploit. Just as Aoko was forming the wall, the puppet pointed its right arm at her face and... I guess this does have something to do with me. I think it's time to go. Before the rocket of death could be fired, Sojiro scooped her up into his arms. How he mustered the strength to do so was a mystery, but he turned his back on the puppet and took off running. He was a nimble sprinter, resembling a deer leaping across obstacles. Sojiro rounded 2 more corners, ignoring whatever complaints Aoko was making, and eventually stopped in the middle of the 2nd floor. He set her down. Alrighty, about us enough time to rest. Sojiro's shoulders heaved as he caught his breath. As light as she was, running while carrying someone else would make anybody winded. She looked up at him in incomprehension. He had that much stamina all along? Then why? It made no sense to her. If he had the stamina to pick her up and run, surely he could have stood up and escaped when he had been downed earlier. Oh, I gave up that time. His words were unfiltered as ever. Though right then, fighting for their lives, he lacked some of his usual absent-mindedness. But why? I don't know. I forgot already. Though he may have turned away because he regretted saying it aloud, his words spoke volumes. For some reason, it pained Aoko to see him like that. Also, Ozaki, I'm feeling terrible.
あの赤い光もその
Was it that weird red light?
ええ、魔術の類よ。岩洞打ちって言ってね。北欧の呪詛の一つ。魔術回路のある私には効かないけど、抵抗のないあなたには効果てきめんみたいね。
Yeah. A form of magecraft. They're called Gondor shots. A curse that originated in Scandinavia. It doesn't have any effect on somebody with magic circuits like me, but you're defenseless against it.
なんだ青崎には効かないのか。じゃあ危ないのはあの腕だけだな。
Okay, I see. It doesn't work on you. That arm is the only thing that poses a threat. Alko had no idea why he was relieved, but she gritted her teeth and fought the urge to snap at him. There was no use in yelling at a time like this. Above all, she felt that it would have been pretty petty in the extreme to voice her annoyance right now.
そうね。注意するのは伸ばしてくる腕だけ。大した相手じゃないわ、やっぱり。
You're right. The extending arm is the only thing I have to worry about, so it's not that tough at all. This time it was not false bravado. Such an enemy would normally be a breeze for Aoko Ozaki. But her shameful negligence had led to the disruption of her magic circuits, making her even less formidable than her enemy. At this point, Aoko had no way of attacking. The only option left to her was to wait for it to expend all of its magical energy, but the perpetual curse mechanism made that a non-starter. This game of tag would not end until one of them was dead. She realized that she was in the same position she had cornered Sojiro in earlier. She glanced at her right arm. She couldn't imagine how she had gotten into such a mess with her magical energy and more than half of its capacity. This had to be karma for having enjoyed toying with Sojiro earlier.
呆れた。いるところにはいるものね、神様って。
Maybe there is a god after all. She grumbled under her breath as she shifted her focus. She had the feel for the fire, but not the igniter. And that killing machine would chase her to the end of time if need be. What she should do next was blindingly clear. She had to get back to normal.
青崎
Aozaki?
ごめん、考え事してた。
Sorry, I was just thinking.
確か。よし、合ってる。しずきくん、そこに横道あるのわかる？
Maybe that could... Okay, Suzuki, I've got it. You see that side passage over there? What? Aoko pointed, but he could see nothing but the walls in the corridor. For one thing, the floor had nothing but left turns, and Aoko was pointing to the right.
2階は中心まで行くと1階に降りる階段があるんだけど、それは私が壊したから使えないの。
At the center of the second floor is a stairway down to the first, which I destroyed earlier so you couldn't use
け
it.
ど、ここの作りも意地が悪くてね。よく見れば、右に曲がる通路もあるのよ。上級者だけにわかる抜け道ってやつ。
But there's another path that leads to the right, like this place is taunting you by design. It's a secret shortcut that only the hardcore fans know
あ
about.
とは注意して探せば、1階の階段までショートカットできる。悪いけど、一人で行って。
If you search carefully, you can find a way to the stairs down to the first floor. Now do as I say and go without me. Aoko turned her back to Sojiro and started walking. Walking in the opposite direction of the escape route, and down towards a long corridor towards the puppet in pursuit.
あいつは無差別だから、ここで壊さないといけない。魔術師は魔術師同士で争うのはいいんだけど、みだりに一般人に手を出しちゃいけないって決まりがあるの。
That thing will kill anything it sees, so I have to destroy it here and now. It's okay for two mages to fight each other, but dragging normal people into this conflict is strictly forbidden.
あいつの目的は私のわけだし、結果がどうあれ、すっきりするでしょ。
I'm the target, so this is the best plan for everyone, don't you think? If Falco won, the puppet would be destroyed. If Falco lost, its objective would be complete and it would shut down. Either way, them going their separate ways would mean Sojiro survived. That is what Aoko meant. But she explained it as if the events were happening to two totally different people.
運が良ければ入り口までたどり着けるわ。
If you're lucky enough, you'll even make it back to the gate in one
それ
piece.
じゃあまた明日ね
So I'll see you tomorrow. Even Sojiro could tell she was just trying to act tough. But she'd already disappeared around the corner by the time he'd thought to stop her. Well then. Mentally, Alko bemoaned the disaster she was in. The quality of this puppet was on a completely different level compared to the one from the park 2 days ago. An auto-incanting perpetual motion machine was a rarity in and of itself. This puppet was also equipped for battle with its extending arms and Gondor projecting crystalline eyes. It was a first-class product that, if put on the market, would sell for hundreds of millions of yen. Although that was only when factoring its value as an antique. For the purposes of combat, it would have made more sense to mobilize a significantly less expensive familiar. To use such a precious commodity as a tool for murder marked this puppet's master as a completely different breed of crazy from the enemy she had faced up until now.
Bebo insomn, solitare putris quiniferis. Ictius mers obitus dies, et meus nativus dies. Teobeam.
Vivo insomnio, solitaire tresco in inferis. Ictus meus obitus dies, et meus navitus dies. Teobeam.
来たわね
Here it comes. The sound of a crackling music box filled the air. The automata, animated by its own curses, approached. The corridor measured approximately 30 feet in length. Alko lay in wait around the corner further down the hall, anticipating the puppet's appearance. This was not to buy Sojiro time to escape. Far from it. Alko had concluded that she couldn't make a break for it under the current circumstances. Even if she did try to escape, and by some miracle made it out of the House of Mirrors, that was as far as she would go. Outside with no cover, Alko would quickly be overtaken and skewered from behind. As long as her magecraft was disabled, escape was impossible. Instead, she chose to force the enemy back. Her situation was not the most favorable, but neither was the puppet's. Through the narrow hall gave Alko no place to run. It in turn prevented the puppet from reaching full speed. This was the weak point of this machine. Automata of this era had a tendency to struggle with minute changes in speed.
セット
Set. She flowed energy into her shorted circuits. Her blood flow and magical energy supply were unstable. God, that looks like fucking dead pixels burned into my fucking monitor. Ugh. It would be difficult to construct a formula in this state. All she could do was harden her right arm by imbuing it with as much energy as she could. Doing so turned her arm into an improvised weapon, like a hammer or a bat. Assuming she could manage to get into close combat range, this was the best she could do. All she needed now was a plan of attack. The question wasn't what weapon to use, but how to use the weapon she had. The simplest way would be to use the mirror's reflections to hide, and then rush the puppet from its blind spot. Except for one major problem. It did not have a sense of sight in the first place. Puppet's view of the world around it did not stem from visual feedback, but from mapping the topography of its surroundings. In theory, it was just the same as a bat's echolocation. The environment could be measured based on the emission and return of the high-frequency sound waves. Those chants served as sensor pulses. As far as the puppet was concerned, the mirrors were no better than transparent panes, making it, even the thought of ambush laughable.
近づけば近づくほどよりリアルに察知される本当は遠距離からの狙撃が最適なんだけどガンドを撃ってくるならフィンの一撃ぐらい隠してるわよね
The closer it gets, the more it's able to sense me. I'd really rather fight it at a distance, but if it's shooting Gondor, it probably has at least a fiend shot up its sleeve too. Gondor was Scandinavian in origin, and considering its simplicity, highly versatile. It was the most effective at impairing a target's health by pointing a finger. As a single action magecraft, it was limited to only causing illness, but there was a secret technique said to be the greatest mastery in the Gondor shot. The Fiend Shot. It could do more than cause simple illness. It was a deadly curse that could stop the heart. I wonder if Rin knows about that, considering Gondor's her favorite spell. The wounds on her back set her nerves on fire. An unarmed girl and a deadly automaton. It was clear that she was the one destined for death. She considered her slim chances of survival when... Ooh. A vision sent chills down her spine. Quietly, using everything she could to clamp down on the feeling, Aoko faced her all too familiar illusion. She clenched her teeth to keep from making a deafening clatter. There, sensation of fingers crawling up her neck. Behind her, the specter stared and laughed. This alone made Aoko want to bolt. On top of it all, when Aoko tried to mentally simulate the coming fight, she estimated a 2 in 10 chance of dying in the first 5 seconds. 20%. At times, her predictions were harsher than reality. If Aoko fought the puppet 10 times, she would die twice. She couldn't stop herself from visualizing her own corpse. She imagined herself collapsing, crumpling under the puppet's curse. Her eyeballs swollen like a bullfish, blood and other fluids oozing from every bodily orifice. 1 in 5. 1 in 5. 1 in 5. A 1 in 10 chance of death was bad enough, but 1 in 5? It drove her crazy. Ammo. Aoko forced down her heart as it tried to escape from her mouth. Taking a deep breath, she peered at her own reflection. She thought back to the White Knight half a year ago. This, she decided, was nothing compared to that. 6 months ago at the Konoji estate. The Hound of White Roses, the Wandersnatch that appeared from within the thick fog, had killed Aoko 100 times out of 10.
Me animae brutalis, otem eftura negata sunt. Manes sum, animam definire ambiguum est.
Mea anima immortalis, autemtem mea futura necta sunt, manus sum animam definire ambiguum est. A dark curse scattered Aoko's daydream, and it was only 30 feet away. It looks kind of like Rider like this. The puppet rounded the corner. Either side stood in the shadows, their forms indistinct. The puppet gave no warning. Without preamble, it swiftly fired a Gondor barrage. Just as Aoko planned, the crystals fizzled as they hit her mist-like barrier of magical energy. The protection would only last a few seconds, giving her just enough time to... Come on! Its stretchable spear sprang towards Aoko's face.
Bingo!
She said in English. The lethal weapon grazed her cheek. All her experience analyzing puppet attack patterns gave her the wherewithal to evade the attack by a hair's breadth. It was one thing if a puppeteer pulling the strings, but autonomous dolls had their limitations. Aoko had bet everything on this killing machine following a predefined template. Puppet could only use a given attack for a given range, and she could adjust her tactics to that. Now's my chance! Before its arm had a chance to fully retract, she charged the puppet. It was a risky gamble, but her overall chances were slim to begin with. The scales tipped in her favor. I think we're already past 5 seconds. If her predictions were correct, there were 2 ways she would die. One was from the Fiend shot fired at that range. And the other was that the puppet's attack patterns was beyond her ability to foresee. Instantaneous mass transfer, otherwise known as mass displacement. Immediately after Aoko dodged the puppet's arm, something smashed into her abdomen. The head-on collision from its shoulder felt like a rocket. Where had the ability to propel itself come from? Puppets like this were not built to have the ability to jet around like that. Doing everything in her power to stay conscious in spite of the pain, Aoko could just make out what happened. It wasn't propelled. It was pulled. Yes. Puppet's arm had not returned to its body. It was lodged in the wall and reeled itself in from the other direction. You can do that? Swallowing her surprise, she hastily pushed herself back up. Her abdomen, specifically her diaphragm, had a significant blow. The attack had left her disoriented. Thankfully, the puppet was surprisingly lightweight. Her bones and organs were intact. She had sustained no life-threatening damage. She was having a hard time breathing, however. She was shaken, though it managed to keep her calm. In another 2 seconds, she'd be back on her feet. No, it was 2 seconds too long. She told herself to calm down. She was already calm. She'd only briefly lost her bearings. She was fine. She could recover her breath and her vision later if only her body would move. Above her, Aoko could hear the warped noise of a powerful force. Come on, legs, move. We've got to get to where? She could once more feel the touch of death. Grant this salvation. Oh, I see. Grant us salvation. Grant us salvation. Grant us salvation. The pup was so close that Aoko could reach out and touch it. It also meant that it could reach out and kill Aoko. I need to get my right arm into its blind spot. By intuition alone, Aoko rolled over to the puppet's right flank. Its arm was still embedded within the wall. From here, it could not attack. She'd made the right decision, and her dizziness faded. Cast off righteousness, lay piety to rest. We beasts are meant to consume each other. Life is but a decoration. Throw away your intellect. Pain powers the mind. Aoko pulled herself back up. It was her turn. What? It was only an instant. Within this labyrinth of mirrors, she saw an image of herself. We die. A blinding, brilliant light flashed. Lacerations appeared across the walls. At the last moment, Aoko managed to thicken the magical energy running through her veins to a primitive form of magecraft resistance. It just barely saved her life from what must have been the puppet's ace in the hole. You. The puppet bore a striking resemblance to Aoko. I mean, I also said that, but I don't know if I said it aloud. The powerful curse is not satisfied with stopping Aoko's heart, but destroying her entire being. Aoko didn't even have the time to be shocked. This was her chance for a counterattack. The puppet's balance was unsteady. Its right arm was still embedded in the wall. Aoko prepared to give its defenseless body a strong kick, but her knees buckled that she collapsed into a heap on the floor. In slumber I live, in dirt I rot alone. The day is the day I died and was born. I come to you. A sudden nausea and lightheadedness overcame Alco. Her body temperature began to rapidly lower.
こいつ呪いをばらまいてるんだった。
This whole time, it was spreading its curses the whole time. She noticed too late. Puppet's curses encircled the hall. The cursed chant that the puppet had used was a source of power, nobled as a defense mechanism, crippling those who drew near with illness. She bore the full brunt of the entire time she was in close proximity to it. Although Alco had magic circuits, she was succumbing just as Sojiro had. Languidly, she forced her deteriorating body to jump back. I'm not done yet! With all the energy she could muster, she forced her way past the exhaustion caused by the curse. However, Alco's blood pressure took a steep nosedive, not from the curse-induced anemia, but from what appeared in front of her. They stood in perfect harmony. In front of Alco was the automaton that shared her face, its left arm held out like an arrow. The deadly weapon shot forward and honed in on her heart. Then, a moment before it made contact.
危ない。
Watch out! The moment she heard that fearless voice, completely out of place in the storm of violence, Alco's body was pulled forcefully to one side. Once again, the extending arm cut up through empty air. While the puppet quickly retracted his left arm, Sojiro took the brief opportunity to take Alco by the hand and flee at full speed. Sojiro ran through the corridor as fast as he could, only stopping when he put enough distance between them and the puppet.
その考えてみると
Hey, I was thinking, and though he had saved her, she looked angry rather than grateful. This didn't keep Sojiro from saying his piece.
明日はどうも忙しいみたいなんだ。
Yeah, tomorrow's gonna be like a really busy day for me, so... In other words, why don't we finish this today? A rather awkward proposal. Alco remained silent. She was also rather angry. Not that she could not figure out what made him tick, nor because he'd returned after escaping. Not even because he was spouting his typically airheaded lines. It was, she supposed, that instant. The fact when he grabbed her hand, her mind had gone completely blank. Alco found it unforgivable. Which beckoned the response.
あなた、正気？
Are you insane? In the heat of the moment, she blurted it out before she could stop herself.
それとも自殺願望でもあったわけ？私もあいつも、あんたなんか殺す対象に過ぎないのよ。
Or maybe you've got a death wish. Don't you realize that either of us could kill you with a snap of a finger?
少なくとも、恩を売る相手じゃない。
At the very least, I don't know you a damn thing.
言っとくけど、私、助けられたぐらいで曲がる信念は持ち合わせていないから。
Saving my life doesn't change a thing between us. Sojiro nodded, clearly unperturbed.
青崎がそんな可愛らしいもんじゃないのはこの夜だけで骨身に染みてるよ。
Don't worry, Aozaki. If tonight taught me anything, it's that you're more ruthless than that. She found herself a little offended.
けど君は勘違いをしてるから少し正そう。
But I do think you need to get one thing straight.
あいつの狙いは青崎だけじゃない。君だけじゃなく、俺も殺す気だと思う。
That thing isn't just trying to kill you. I think it's trying to kill the both of us. She was having none of it. Her eyes shot daggers his way.
話は最後まで聞く。どうしてかっていうと、1階の入り口あるだろ？あの細長い通路。
And before you chew me out, you need to know something. Do you remember that first floor entrance at the end of that long corridor?
なんでかあそこから先に進めないんだ。逃げたくても逃げ出せなくて、仕方なく戻ってきた。
Well, it's blocked. I tried my best to find a way out, but no luck. There was no choice but to turn right back. Alko's eyes widened ever so slightly in amazement. She felt admiration rather than shock that her enemy would go to such lengths.
それに、さっきので完全に敵扱いされた。あの人形、こっちをじろっと睨んできたし。
And besides, it was hostile to me too earlier. I could tell by how it was glaring at me.
いや、一瞬でよく見えなかったけど、生きた心地しなかったな。青崎も気をつけた方がいい。多分よっぽど怖い顔をしているに違いないぞ、あれ。
Well, it happened really fast, so I didn't really get a good look at it, but it was really unsettling. You should be careful. That thing. Man, she got a weird face.
それはご親切にどうも。
Gee, thanks. I'm gonna call it there for tonight, because that's 2 hours. Place bookmark. I was hoping we'd finish this scene tonight, but somehow that doesn't seem possible unless I go really late, and I have things to do tomorrow. So we're gonna call it there. Where is the thing that makes me right? Again, guys, I am dealing with the consequences of various forms of exhaustion. So, hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, rest of your night. Hope you all are taking care of yourself. And yeah, don't be afraid to give yourself like a day or two of like full rest of like bed rotting or something. I know I'm not. Well, they probably should be a little bit more hesitant about it. Anyway, catch you guys later. Bye.